from Revel Ciders to talk to us all about cider. So for those who have tried some Ontario cider over the past handful of years, I bet you've probably tried some of Revel stuff. They've been, I think, making some really great ciders over and a lot of variety. I think across that spectrum there, I feel like everything is delicious and tasty and different, which is really great. So a bit about Tariq. Tariq studied plant science at the University of Guelph and learned to ferment while living on an organic farm in Coketown, Ontario. In his time on the farm, he fermented everything from mulberries to carrots and fell in love with wild fermentation from the start. Revel started in 2014 as Tariq's solo passion project, and by 2022, the Revel team has grown to 7 people, with over 1,000 cases of Revel bottles and cans shipped to discerning drinkers every month. Tariq has received a Top 30 Under 30 award from the Ontario Hostelery Institute for his work in building Revel Cider. So Tariq, welcome to GTA Brews' club meeting. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me. Sorry, it took me a second to figure out how to unmute myself.
Yeah, so Tariq's going to talk to us about Revel Cider. Maybe Tariq, I think we'd be really interested to hear more about your philosophy to making ciders and fermenting them and aging them. Part of the component, I'm curious in terms of all of our participants here, who had a chance to get their hands on the Perry de Coupage and the vermouth soda that we're hoping that Tariq might be able to talk to us a bit more about those specific ciders.
Yeah, a couple folks, it looks like.
Yeah. Okay, I only asked because I'm not going to get you to do a guided tasting of these if I'm the only one who has them.
Sure. Fair enough.
But if so, Tariq, please go ahead. I'll stop talking.
No, sure. Yeah, that was a kind intro. Appreciate that. Yeah, I guess our kind of ethos or philosophy. So I don't, just to give you a bit more background on myself, I don't have any like classical training. I guess I never went to school for this. Really started on the farm. Yeah, home brewing and kind of taught myself out of a book for those kind of original early fermentations. I couldn't even tell you what the book was called because it was leafed through so much by previous farm interns that the cover was totally ripped off. But it was like very old, like fruit and vegetable fermentation recipes. So I did like wild fermented pickles and things like that, and cheeses too, before I started getting into alcohol fermentations as kind of fruit and like some vegetables like beets and things became available. But I think that has really kind of carried through even now, a decade later, just in how we make cider and wine today, where it's really a focus and like celebration, I guess, of all kinds of different fruits and botanicals that grow and exist in Ontario. So everything we do is completely wild fermented. It's all Ontario fruit. We're not filtering, we're not fining our products, and we don't back sweeten anything with the exception of our sweet vermouth. If anyone got the vermouth soda can, that is totally dry. It's we let that ferment to dryness. We do use our sweet vermouth for it, but yeah, we don't back sweeten the cans or anything. So the sodas are a little bit different than like a vermouth soda that you'd make with the our straight vermouth at home. Yeah, that is kind of the ethos. It's really kind of learning, if we want to get perceptual sweetness and we don't necessarily want to add vanilla, we've got to get creative. So we do things like sassafras or sweetgrass. These are both kind of local ingredients that grow in Ontario. It's been kind of fun to put ourselves in this like creative sandbox, so we can kind of learn what the heck we can find locally, basically. So the other kind of like big example I guess I'll give is looking for citrus character. Citrus is like a very popular flavor, of course, and yeah, not being able to use citrus has been challenging, but we found some interesting things like lemon verbena and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting one of them. There's like different kinds of like marjoram and thymes as well that have other kind of citrus notes to them as well. So those have all been really, really fun. Um,
Tariq, if I could
yeah.
just jump in, earlier you had said that all your ciders are 100% wild fermented. So do you never add any yeast at all to anything? Is it all spontaneous fermentation, or in some cases will you add like a little bit of something, but then not pasteurize and let the wild yeast take over?
Yeah, no, so all the main fermentations are all 100% wild. We're not adding any lab yeast. And so the only point where we will potentially add yeast is if we're going to bottle condition something, because we want that process to be a little bit more kind of predictable, I guess. But yeah, that is the only exception to that rule. Um, yeah, I mean, having said that, having wild fermented kind of in the same space for almost 8 years now, uh, like things colonize your barrels and the vessels kind of in the facility. So as you've probably heard about Cantillon, like things tend to be pretty consistent year over year in a place, even in a place that is 100% wild, just because these wild strains and whatever will colonize your space. But the way I think about it is like, I guess in the context of beer, you'd put things in a cool ship and have it collect microflora over X amount of hours. But for us, you have fruit that hangs on a tree for months on end collecting wild yeast and bacteria, and that's what those blooms that you see even on a lot of apples at the grocery store, sometimes they're wax, but oftentimes it's just yeast that is on the fruit. So there's not necessarily a reason to, well, I guess there's not a reason for us, I feel like, to add yeast or bacteria. But yeah, certainly if you're kind of looking for, um, I guess, whatever the other commercial ciders are looking for, they have a reason to add yeast. But yeah, we don't really feel the need to. I just find things that are more, I just find things are more interesting and complex when we don't. But yeah, we're doing a lot of weird stuff. I feel like this whole kind of project is a bit of a like exploration and learning experience for myself, just to kind of like figure out, what happens if we do things this way or in this vessel or with this like strange ingredient. So yeah, some of the kind of more exciting things we've done in the last little while are excuse me, we've gotten a couple clay amphora, and so we're aging things in different or these two like clay vessels, which of course is a very ancient technique. um, the first like recorded clay wine aging happened like 6,000 years ago, so that's pretty wild. um, and we've also like coated the insides of our barrels with spruce resin a few months back. Yeah, just a lot of weird fun stuff going on. um yeah, we can like taste stuff, or I don't know if people have like some questions about all of the things I've said or any of the things I've said.
I'm now
Yeah.
kicking myself that I didn't get any of the cider. So because I'm listening here and I'm thinking like I want to kind of not repeat David's question, but I kind of want to I wonder about like repeatability and I'm intrigued because if everything's wild, because I'm now thinking, oh, this is so cool. Like I've as a brewer, I've stayed away from any sort of wild or funk, and everybody, like I see Luke smiling, right? So I mean, because he knows, like I shy away from that stuff, right? So, but this intrigues me because it sounds so interesting and sounds so uh, like you said, complex, right? Like the product that you're ending up with, or the cider you're producing is got to be so unique. Do you ever worry about not being able to replicate it?
Yeah, certainly. And yeah, I can speak to repeatability a little bit more, because yeah, if anyone's got like Perry de Coupage and has maybe tried a previous batch as well, this last fall, last the Perry from last fall is far better than any Perry we've made in the past, and I am yeah, I'm like, I have no idea why that happened. Part of it is I think the guys like kind of really tried to baby it and like racked it regularly, and really paid close attention to it, because we've had every other year it's felt like we've had to dump all of our perry, and it's been a real challenge to get perry right. um, but yeah, like we often have things that we have not been able to recreate. So like a good example of that is our very first wine that we released. It was back in 2018. It was an orange wine, but we aged it on 3 different grape skins. It was primarily Sauvignon Blanc was the juice, and also aged it on Dolgo crabapple pomace. And we've tried to recreate that wine 3 years in a row and have not gotten it. And I think we'll have it this year, but like, yeah, I mean, it's not in bottle yet, so I shouldn't say that. I'll believe it once it's packaged. But it's been a real challenge. But I think like part of it is like we've done, we did a big customer survey at the beginning of the year, and we've done like 21 like hour-long interviews with different customers. um, and what we're hearing time and again is folks want like innovative, unique products from us, and that's kind of what people have come to expect from us. And so it's kind of okay, that things don't kind of aren't necessarily the same every year, because that's kind of what we've like built this community that like people want that almost. We do obviously hear time and again that people are like, oh, when is this product coming back? And we're working on this like annual schedule, so things show up once a year. But even some of the blends, like they'll have one name and we'll use the same name for the blend next year, but it'll use like slightly different fruit, or it'll use like cherries instead of red plums because we didn't get any red plums that year, for example. So there's like the variation with the microflora, sure, but there's also just variation with fruit, because it is it's truly an agricultural product. And yeah, we are at the whim of Mother Nature. I see someone mentioned Milk the Funk. I used to be pretty active on there. Haven't really had the time for it anymore, but yeah, that's a great community.
Is
I'm
there?
just gonna, yeah, shoot,
I
yeah.
was going to say, is there like, because I know nothing about cider, right? But when you started talking about wild fermentation and you're not adding any yeast, it just for some reason I was like, wow, this is incredible. I wonder length of time from start of the process to product being ready to be released, because I know only about beer. So how long does it take? Like, what's it taking you guys?
Yeah, super variable, but oftentimes things have been in tank a year before they're released. So yeah, and that's like, yeah, there's a couple different directions I want to go there, but one of them being that we're on this annual schedule. So we'll press fruit in the fall, and then for all of the kind of fruit following, like fruit additions that we're going to add, that happens the following year. And then we'll have a maceration for like 3 to 6 months, and then that product will get released. And sometimes it's like we have a series of ciders called Austera, where it's a golden plum cider paired with different flowers. And it's cider from, just to give some examples, cider from 2020, then we add golden plums in 2021, and then we're adding flowers from 2022. And so that's like it's like a 3-year project every time. And yeah, it's sometimes like a challenge because we're trying to put vintage dates on bottles and trying to figure out what the heck, which year to write. And so yeah, we've had some I feel like that series in particular has just been a challenge to date things. But so yeah, we have that component of it. But then the other component is that we want to protect it from going acidic, or from getting THP, which are both like just major issues, I think, with any wild fermentation, regardless of whether you're doing beer or wine or cider. And so often I find that just continually adding fruit. So yeah, you'll have your kind of pressings in the fall. Things are fairly cold, so fermentation is quite slow. Spring, things start to kind of wake up. We don't have like full temperature control in the facility. We just have heaters, so we can keep it kind of working temperature in the winter. But in the summer, we also don't have windows, so it does stay like a little bit cooler than it does outside, at least till August. And so things are like relatively protected. But then when we add other fruits to them, you kick off fermentation again because you're adding an additional sugar source. And so that fermentation, kind of waking up sac, but also having it produce additional CO2 will protect you from both acetic acid and THP development. And so that is really handy because otherwise the most I guess stable vessel we have is package, and we do sit on a lot of inventory kind of in package because yeah, sometimes we're just waiting for THP to age out too, which which yeah, can happen. Or just for things to kind of come together a little bit. Sometimes things are a little bit sulfury, which like does go away. Yeah, wild fermentations can be a little bit stressful because we're not adding like nutrient either. And so yeah, your yeast can sometimes throw off a little bit of sulfur, but that does, excuse me, age out in package. And so yeah, sometimes we're just waiting a few months for that to happen. Yeah, haven't been like perfect because there's definitely a lot of bottle variation as well. And sometimes we'll like taste a couple bottles and release something, and then like, oh crap, now we're tasting more bottles, and like not all of these have aged as well as we thought. So yeah, they're, you know, we're continually learning, but that's part of the fun.
Yeah, and I guess if your customer base is really interested in innovation and that type of stuff from what you're producing, then they're going to continually come back regardless. You know, like you said, maybe there's one bottle they're like, I don't know, but they'll still go back to you because they know that, you know, this is a learning process, right? I think that's what you're telling us, right?
Yeah, and we try and bring all of our customers kind of along that learning process as much as we can to like if something, you know, if we find out that something is not, you know, quite right, I'll be like, okay, you know, sit on this for a few months and this is going to be better. And I'll try and do that as fast as we can. But I mean, on the just like the more kind of interesting learning experiences, not just about off flavors, like all of our like newsletters and TikToks, like and Instagram or whatever, we're trying to like, you know, take people along for the ride, because it's learning for us, but I feel like it can also be learning for everyone else too. So that yeah has been like a real focus on kind of all of the content that we make as well, kind of I guess around the product, which is it's just me making all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of just follows my own interest too. But yeah, it's a pretty small team here, but yeah.
Wow. Have you guys, is there a specific flagship product that you guys are producing that you're definitely like, this is consistent enough? I say enough because it is wild. So it's like, it's good. It's and we have people coming back always for this, you know, sort of whatever cider it is, or
Yeah, Sonata for sure. I see Patrick yeah, holding that up. Patrick, I think I recognize your name from Shopify.
Probably from the taco shop too, right? Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah,
In
totally.
Alliston, right? Yeah.
Right. There you go. I was like, I can't remember where exactly it was, but I do remember that. Glad to hear the TikToks and Instagram reels are interesting. That's sweet. Yeah, I spent the entire day today on the one that we posted, which was kind of silly. But yeah, to your question, time and place and Sonata and a lot of the canned products in particular, we do bring those back year over year. Those ones, you know, I feel like we don't make any money on the cans, but they're like a good starting point for folks, especially because like yeah, committing to a 750 ml bottle of a wild fermented cider can be like a bit of an ask for a first time customer. I think it's also for, you know, like great for people that are coming back too, kind of just to have options that like that. But yeah, pretty much all the canned products are things that kind of have hit, I guess, that, you know, consistent enough, I guess, world. But time and place is certainly like our main kind of flagship product. But like we make just as much time and place as we do. There you go. There's a can of time and place there. We make just as much as that as we do Sonata. So yeah, Sonata has become like, you know, as much of a mainstay product, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. I'm sucking up all the air, so I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has some questions for Tariq here. Oh, Attila does.
Just in. Yeah.
Hello. I'm like David. I know nothing about cider, so um, I I got some. What I did is, I think about 2 years ago, I got some apple cider, and I just put it into like I guess a 5 liter water bottle. I put yeast into it,
Yeah.
and I let it sit there, and it's still sitting there. I keep walking by and saying, "What am I gonna do with you?" I just look at it, but there's like a white, I guess, a pellicle on top. Like it's like
Yep.
it just covers it white. Is that good, bad? What should I do with it? What can I do with it? Where do I go from here?
Yeah, I mean, first step would be taste it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, pellicle, like we have it happen a lot, and it can be bad, it can be good. It kind of depends. I think probably a bigger issue is leaving on lees, like gross lees for that long. That can certainly, if yeah, in winemaking, people talk about like lees or some types of lees being unhealthy, and it's like unclear exactly what they mean scientifically, but like aromatically, if you leave things on like quote unquote bad lees for too long, you'll start to get like sulfury notes that can be really hard to age out if you're not like kind of on top of racking things. But yeah, it is, yeah, super hard to say, kind of not knowing anything about the fruit or have you tasted it recently or?
I haven't. It's just I got some jugs of apple cider. I got it from the apple place in Bowmanville. I mean, you get them
Oh,
from Costco and stuff. But I just took that, put some I think put some yeast into it, and then let it sit there with an airlock, and just sat there and still sitting there. So I'm just
yeah.
wondering, should I try it or should I dump it or what should I do with it?
I mean, always try it. The worst case scenario is vinegar.
Okay.
It's not gonna
All
hurt
right.
you.
So I'll try it and see what
Um,
happens. Okay.
yeah.
Should I also carbonate it or just do it like that? Like, should I put it into like a keg and carbonate it or?
Yeah, so we've done a couple still ciders. We don't do too many of them. They're a lot harder to sell. I think people kind of expect things to be sparkling for ciders, but we do it occasionally, and oftentimes, we all kind of like, I guess, go from like wine to beer to cider here. We're pretty I guess, beverage agnostic. And so when we're thinking about bottling a cider still, it's usually because it has like some kind of tannin or textural component that we feel holds up to being still and doesn't necessarily need the textural component of carbon dioxide. And so we're often letting just the product tell us if it wants to be like that, versus kind of going into it with any preconceived notions, because it's,
Okay. So
yeah, we don't want to force
if it
things.
tastes if it tastes good that way, then leave it. If not, then put some CO2 to it and see what happens. If
That's
it's
it.
no good, then
Yeah.
dump it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We're,
Cool.
we're we're very much like tasting things to learn,
Okay. Cool.
and try and figure it out that way.
All right. Thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We did have a couple questions come in through the chat, Tariq.
Mhm.
One of them was from Avjeet, and he asked, when do we get to taste the stuff from the amphoras? I'm quite excited about it. Looks like,
Yeah.
looks very much like Kvery
Yeah. The
used,
Quevri.
yeah,
Yeah.
for Georgian wines.
Totally. So yeah, Quevri, yeah, they're the same thing. They're just amphora that are buried in the ground. Um, and yeah, when do you get to taste the stuff? It's online now. So I think we're down to the last 40 bottles of one of the releases. But yeah, we have an amphora pack on the website right now. It's a 3-pack. It has all 3 releases. Yeah, and there's like there you go. There's the link. Sweet. Thanks, Luke.
That is so
Um,
cool, right? I
yeah.
mean,
So those are, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't want to take away from yourself, but that when you mentioned that, and you mentioned like this is a process that was done like 6,000 years ago, and then you think like, this is so cool that you can still do the same process, and you've done things like this. So I now I'm intrigued. So of course I'm going to probably go online and buy some. So
Yeah, yeah. The clay, you see a couple wineries kind of using them locally, but they're very few and far between. Rosewood have a couple amphora. They're a winery in Beamsville. Um, Apart from that, I'd be pretty hard pressed to say who else does. A couple folks have concrete tanks. Like I know Pro Morset has concrete tanks, but I don't believe they have amphora. Could be wrong about that, but I haven't seen any amphora releases from them. Um, Yeah, and I just haven't seen any other Ontario producers. Certainly not cider producers, either. Like Amphora is just, or sorry, Rosewood is just doing exclusively wine in their Amphora. Um, and yeah, we're doing a bit of both, but just like we're just trying to learn as much as we can. And I would say the other thing about Amphora is they are different depending on where you get them from. So like the clay itself. So we got them from this family making them in Italy. They send 20 a year to North America because they're like painstakingly handmade. But they're from Impruneta, Italy, which is in the north, and they're using pretty limestone-rich clay. And so limestone just being calcium carbonate reacts with acidity and lowers acidity in a beverage, and which is pretty cool. But if you're getting amphora from clay from somewhere else in the world, it's not necessarily going to do that. These amphora that we got are also they were baked at like I think 1800 Fahrenheit, which is a little bit cooler than some of the other manufacturers, and so they're a little bit more porous. The other cool thing about amphora versus barrels is that amphora are a lot more consistently porous than barrels, because oak, of course, will swell, and so the pores will swell when they're hydrated, whereas amphora is like hard clay, and so it doesn't. It just
It
kind of
sucks it up.
oxygenates.
Yeah.
It oxygenates very consistently because of that, and often I think actually in our very limited experience, it does it a lot faster, which is interesting. But again, yeah, that would change depending on how hot they bake the amphora. The other thing is our amphora are not coated with anything, and so like Quevri are like pretty often coated with beeswax, and so you don't get as much of like the clay character themselves. You get more of like I guess a little bit of the wax note. Burying them in the ground certainly changes things a little bit too. But yeah, they're like everyone is a little bit different, and so it's yeah. If you try for a product from one producer, it's not necessarily going to be the same or even remotely similar sometimes to Amphora products from another producer.
The actual fermenter itself has a terroir then.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of our cider makers kind of made the comment that he was like, Tariq, these taste like they're from a different place than anything else to make. And I'm like, yeah, like absolutely agree with that. They're really cool.
That is really neat. Corey had a question. Says, we taste some ciders that taste quote unquote funky, and it took us a while to really enjoy it, but now we really do. Where does the funk come from? Is it from the yeast?
Yeah, absolutely. That is where it's from. Yeah, so we've got we're kind of lucky enough to be in the same city, I guess, as the Scarman Labs, and so we've sent stuff to them in the past to play it out for us to see, like, hey, what the heck is in here? And it's actually pretty cool. A lot of the early fermentation stuff is like similar bacteria strains that you see in like early or like young lambic. So like Pichia is a big one that you'll see earlier on. And then, yeah, after, SAC has kind of like come and gone, I guess, and we're adding like, for Time and Place, for example, we add Dalgo crabapple pomace to it. And so when you like first add these like milled apples, you're adding some sugar, and, certainly SAC is going to ferment some of that. But then, what are apples made of, right? They're made of starch, which is just long chain sugars. And so Brettanomyces is really, as far as I know, the only yeast equipped to break those down. And so you're going to get, in the summer also, so Brettanomyces is more active at warmer temperatures. And that is also just happens to be when the sac have kind of finished chewing through that fruit. So you're going to start to see Brett character develop, and we often kind of will taste things and be like, oh, this needs another summer, or just like knowing that is going to happen in the summer. And so yeah, that's how we do things, but that is also where the funk is coming from, to answer the question.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Matt had a question as well. If I wanted to give wild, and I was really interested in this because my mind is going now because of this discussion. If I wanted to give a wild fruit fermentation a try, what is the most forgiving and more consistent fruit to work with?
Yeah, so I would work with apples or grapes or something that has acidity. fruit that has acidity is going to, like, acid is ultimately a preservative, so it's going to protect from a lot of issues that you might have. And even we find sometimes with kind of the higher pH juices, like pears are a good example of that. Sometimes pears can be 3.7, they can edge 4 sometimes, whereas a lot of ciders like 3.5 and below. And the perries can sometimes get weird, as I mentioned, because of that. And the big issue is like Acetobacter wants, if you have an Acetobacter in the kind of mix, it'll want to create an environment that's more acidic for itself, and so it'll start to create acetic acid. And so that is probably the biggest issue you're going to have with wild fermentation. So yeah, work with apples. If you're going to do it on the home scale, grapes are probably easier, honestly. Apples are just a real pain in the ass to press if you don't have the right equipment. Whereas grapes, like, you can buy a wine press and press them, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Like, you can destem them if you want, you don't have to. With apples, you have to mill them first, and it's like, it can be hard, or at least it was really hard for me like 10 years ago when I was homebrewing, to find a grinder that could really handle them. I basically used like old grape grinders and broke quite a few of them trying to mill apples. So yeah, they're like great if you can process them, but challenging if you don't have the right tools.
Wow. I was wondering about that. I know that we talk about apples. I know if we were to use the fresh pressed cider or pressed apples, that I think, David, we used to get those by a dean in some of the buys, but I know that we would have to reach out probably to one of the local apple farms. But did they not provide us with something like that in the past, like a frozen apple concentrate or something like that?
So through the club, long story short, we worked with for the past handful of years, this guy who lives in East End, Toronto, essentially he owns like a multi-generational apple farm in the Eastern Townships. And so I think they've been making cider apples for, a really, like, I don't know, 100 years or more. And so what we got from him was actually like a fresh pressed apple juice and he kind of made the blend himself, just like based on the varieties that he had available. And I know he has some experience in that. So like it was like a fresh pressed apple cider that essentially we just dumped into fermenters and then fermented.
I see a few more questions here.
Yeah.
But yeah, we probably should open something just for the folks that did buy and want to kind of taste it. But we can certainly open something and continue answering questions.
Yeah.
I got the Perry open, so if
yeah, does
sure.
anybody else have
Damn, I
something
opened the other one first.
You
Oh, you
open
opened-
I actually would recommend opening the soda first, the vermouth soda.
I picked wrong. I had a 50-50
oh.
chance.
No worries.
I'll
just
go
'cause
switch.
The Perry is like quite aromatic, and so yeah, that's kind of why. That's the only reason, really. But I can run through some other questions too while I'm pouring. And
yeah, I had I'll read them out to you, Tariq.
yeah.
Michael asked, do they use cool ships for the spontaneous fermentation, or just rely on yeasts from ingredient must?
We just rely on the yeast from the ingredient must. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're a cool ship. You have it outside for a couple of hours. Fruit hangs on a tree for months on end, collecting yeast and bacteria. So yeah, we find things actually really take off quite fast after pressing.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't really have any problems with that.
What kind of water profile are you guys usually using? This is from Patrick.
Right. So we don't add any water to our ciders. So yeah, all of our ciders are just like 100% fruit juice. We do add water, for example, to this product, vermouth soda. So this would be vermouth plus a kind of house-made soda that we did. And we're just using Guelph water here. So Guelph water tends to be it's pretty hard. It's pretty like minerally. And I actually find that like adds body and texture to, like, yeah, I mean, probably most of you guys are familiar with kind of tasting both salt water and hard water, and if not, if you've ever had like your pasta water or water in the ocean accidentally tasted it, it's a lot salt. It's very salty, but if you can look past the salt, it's also like has a bit of a slick texture, and that I find that Guelph water certainly has that as well. And yeah, so I quite like it for making like piquettes and the vermouth sodas, but we don't add water to anything aside from those two products. Yeah.
So this is the vermouth soda that you're tasting right here, right? So.
So, maybe we should talk about. I'm like getting distracted by all the questions, but maybe we should talk about vermouth soda and then like jump into some more of these.
Yeah, we'll talk about the soda first. I mean, because I know that there's another question that came in, but let's talk about the vermouth soda. And I am unfamiliar with vermouth, other than the fact that it's something that you show to the dry martini, right? So I'm unfamiliar as to what it is and why it's used. So
vermouth is an aperitif. You can drink it on its own. You can also put it into many different cocktails. Some of the most popular cocktails, like you mentioned, martinis have a little bit of vermouth in them. We have made both sweet and dry vermouths, and we wanted to make oh my goodness, my brain is also going in different directions right now. But we wanted to make vermouth kind of with the same ethos that we take with our wines and ciders, and to really have it kind of reflect the time and the place that we live. And so our vermouths are exclusively like Ontario fruit, and they're often almost always featuring foraged botanicals that we find kind of across the province. So the kind of traditional vermouth recipes that you'll find are usually they've got like orange peel and lemon peel and wormwood, and it's just a lot of imported ingredients, and you can make those vermouths anywhere in the world, and they kind of don't really feel all that special. But we wanted ours to like really reflect where we live, so that's kind of what feels special about our vermouth. And then vermouth sodas are like one of my favorite beverages to drink, and so we're like, heck, let's just make it and can it, pre-can it, so that we just have it and don't have to fuck around, I guess. So that was kind of the idea behind these, and this one in particular, it's about 40% vermouth and 60% soda. And we've kind of, in this vermouth in particular, the botanicals are really reflective of what's around in the spring. And so it's apple blossoms, it's spruce tips and white pine shoots. And the spruce tips and the white pine shoots, they both add a little bit of citric acidity. Of course, they add a touch of aroma. They also add just a hint of bitterness that we would kind of be missing, and that's kind of what you're using wormwood for primarily. And so we're still trying to make vermouth, but just trying to figure out ways to use local ingredients to do it. And we also kind of wanted to tie originally wanted to tie them all to a specific season, and so this was actually the first one that we ever made. This is the second iteration of it, and it was really kind of focused on spring botanicals.
Nice. David and Mark, you guys both have got it, right? I don't know if you have it as well, Cliff, but what are your, I'm just curious what your thoughts are, because I don't have it, right? And I'm intrigued to hear what everybody else thinks about it.
I'm by no means a professional judge, so I'm going to butcher tasting notes here, but I think it's really delicious. It's light. It's got a nice flavor, a lot of citrus in there. It's refreshing. Hearing that there are spruce tips in there, I think that's coming through a little bit for me. No, it's delicious. It's fantastic.
Sweet.
I agree. I'm no judge, and this is probably the only vermouth soda I've ever drank, or even vermouth. But I really like it too. Super drinkable. I got the cherries and crab apples for sure. Fruity in the aroma. I think I even get some funk, which I love.
Yeah.
Really good. I was just wondering, actually, on the can, right under the ABV, what's the 54 WL 1725? What does that mean?
Yeah, so that's our wine license number. with this product, so we don't have anywhere on it kind of like Revel Cider. It is like vermouth soda by Revel, it says, but because it doesn't say Revel Cider or have our address on it, you have to have the wine license number. Not
Okay.
everyone like follows these rules as faithfully as they probably should, but because we're exporting this to other provinces, like Quebec is really really kind of anal about it. So yeah, we have to make sure, otherwise we're like handwriting it on each can or applying stickers individually to each can, and that's just a real nightmare. So
Huh?
that's also actually, Quebec is also why this can says fruit wine / vin de fruit, because they wouldn't accept it as any other name. And most other provinces don't really care, but Quebec really cares. So we do things for them sometimes.
This feels like the perfect. So I'm not in Toronto right now. I'm in Florida, but I understand it was a really nice, warm spring day. I feel like this would be the perfect drink for that weather.
Yeah, totally.
It's just super refreshing, light. It's great.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. We would see like all the breweries making seltzers, and we're like, you know what? I don't love seltzers. We're like, this is like it's not a seltzer, but it kind of feels like an interesting like response to it, and still like a way that feels true to like what we're doing. Yeah, that's I had that thought like when we first started making them. They're not like super seltzery at all, but it's like kind of a fun way to like play, I guess, in that space a little bit.
I just
You
had
can
a
tell it's
white claw.
wild for sure, I think.
Yeah.
What's that, sorry?
You can definitely tell it's wild. Like it's
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
a seltzer you buy at the store or anything.
For sure, for sure.
I'd say it's more seltzery than I think you give yourself credit for. I just had a white claw, and
Great.
it's a lot better.
Sweet.
Really good.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that, guys. Thanks.
I'll be honest here. I have the exact wrong vermouth because my memory of what was down in the fridge downstairs was completely off. So I've got the Pleased to Meet
Okay.
You, which is the other one. I'm sure
That is the other one.
really
Yeah.
there, but I definitely had this one. Probably my last order I did from you. So I'm going off of a lot of memories. I think this the Pleased to Meet You a little bit lighter. I definitely get like the I'm at a loss for which wine grape it is. I'm not in that. It's definitely like a whiter taste to it rather than like the red. But
Yeah.
I think, as Mark mentioned, like this is completely my introduction to this world,
Cool.
and I'm definitely getting more of it. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
And being completely honest, like this wild fermentation, like it's neat, it's interesting. I love that. Like you're probably not going to get the same thing twice over
Totally.
time. Like you said, like it's an expression of like this period of time and what that batch was. And yeah, that's super awesome that like we actually get to experience that with you rather than like drinking a Coors Light where it's the same today, tomorrow, 15 years from now, right? Like it's the same thing. So
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
The way I think about like fermentation is like I've got, I started when I was 20, but like if I do this for the rest of my life, like maybe I have like 60 opportunities in a lifetime because we do it once a year. And so it just like that just like really puts it into perspective for me. It just feels a lot more like every fermentation feels like a lot higher stakes, but also just like a lot more special, because yeah, there's only just that many opportunities in a lifetime, both to like try them and to make them. But yeah.
See, now I'm really, Cliff, because you said that, and because Tariq, what you just said, I'm really kicking myself for not getting some for this, but that's okay. That's okay. You're there. I can order.
It's free shipping.
Yeah.
Free shipping over $50. So.
Yeah, I think it'll be easy
Oh,
to
yeah.
spend the $50. Like, it's not like I'm hurting right now. So this is that whole, for some reason or other, that whole wild fermentation thing has got me going, and I just am not normally a wild fermentation type of person. I usually shy away from that. I want control and that sort of stuff, but it intrigues me. We did have another question from Michael coming in to the chat. How do you suppress bacteria Brett lacto using the must yeast fermentation, or is that desirable in your process?
Yeah. So Brett, Lacto certainly are doing some stuff. They are certainly active in our beverages. Yeah, Lacto, for example, it's probably less lactobacillus and more like malolactic bacteria, which is still like an LAB type bacteria. But so what's kind of primarily happening there is apples, the acid profile in an apple is primarily malic acid, and so that's like up to 90% of the acidity in an apple is malic acid. And so malolactic fermentation, it can be done a little bit by yeast, but it can't be completely done by yeast, and it's primarily done by Enococcus or malolactic bacteria. And so that, like, we've got some pretty strong strains of that, I think, in this facility, because we're just giving them like pure malic acid almost every year. So they tend to chew through the malic acid, and I like that. I think kind of making zero sugar ciders, they can tend to be a little bit if you just don't have the sugar to balance the acidity, they can get like pretty tart. So having that malolactic fermentation to kind of reduce the acidity is an important part. And then Brett, we let it happen if it's here. We're not afraid of it. Sometimes I feel like Brett is it can be like so different, based on what it has to eat and what specific Brett is in there. And so like sometimes it goes pineapple, and that's like great. Sometimes it goes funky, and we kind of put that on the product pages, and some people buy it and some people don't, and that's totally fine. We're just making different things for I feel like both for us, but also for a lot of different people. And a lot of folks, I think, are like interested enough to try both.
Cool. Luke had a question about have you experimented with keeving? I haven't got a clue what keeving is, so.
Yeah, so keeving, it's a French process, like France ciders, or ciders from France will have this process happen occasionally. It's hard to do in North America, and the reason is it needs a couple things to happen right, and almost like perfectly for it to work. We've had it kind of almost accidentally happen, but basically you need to, first off, in the farm, in the orchard, you can't be putting any nitrogen down, because that will get into the fruit. And if you have too much nitrogen in the juice, it has to be like a really like low nutrient juice in the first place to do keeving. The second thing is you need to be working with tannic fruit, which is also pretty hard to find here. So what is keeving, for anyone who doesn't know? Keeving is a process where you have this like formation of this like primarily like pectin raft in the beverage, and that pectin separates out from the juice because partially because of like how much tannin is in there. I could be saying some of these wrong because it's been a little bit of a, it's been a while since I've read up on keeving.
Oh no, do we lose
Oh
him?
no. Oh no, he's frozen. He's
Fermenting,
frozen in time.
and you're gonna leave. Oh, am I frozen? Sorry.
Oh no, you're back. Now you're back. Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Did you guys miss some stuff, or?
I think we may have. I think we may have.
Maybe like 15
So
seconds or
start
10
from
seconds.
the beginning.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to start from the beginning.
Start
but
from
we're
where
talk-
what you meant by keeving. Keeving is
he's frozen
that's when we
again.
sort of froze.
Here we go. Are we back?
Yes, now you're back.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I just switched my Wi-Fi network. Sometimes I have issues with that.
All right.
So keeving
So-
is you should start again. That's where we missed it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So keeving, basically, it's a process of making sweet cider without having to back sweeten it. And so you want to start with low nutrient juice, and then you want this pectin raft to form because it also sucks up nutrient, so that your yeast run out of nutrient and die, and so that you're left with some residual sweetness in your cider. And that is really the only way to kind of, or it's the like traditional way to let that happen kind of naturally. Certainly you could like cold crash and rack a bunch of times and you would eventually get all of the yeast out of it. Like they do that in wine because they have no like process that's equivalent to keeving. But yeah, keeving was used historically to make ciders that had a little residual sweetness. So when I think of like the French style of cider, it has some tannin, but it also has a residual sweetness, and it's often a little bit lower ABV too, because it's not fermented all the way.
Nice.
That's what it is. Yeah.
That
And so
tie.
I don't have any experience with it.
Okay, so there you go.
To answer the question, yeah, we've kind of had it accidentally happen almost in like a 1 liter carboy that we did as like an experiment with a tannic apple that we got from the University of Guelph's research orchard, but have not been able to really do that commercially, just because the fruit that we're getting is not similar enough to what they would get in France.
Nice. That does kind of tie into a little bit of what Emily introduced us to with respect to the differences between English and French ciders earlier on in the meeting. We did have another Cliff had another question regarding the soda water.
Yeah.
What would be most similar to the Guelph water hardness or the profile that you guys use? Because I know, like you said, Tariq, the Guelph water is hard. There's a lot of minerals in there, right? So
yeah. I wish I could answer this question better, but yeah, I don't know what the most similar might be. It probably is a better question for potentially Escarpment Labs would know. Certainly any of the breweries making beer here would know. Yeah, I got to assume there's like a fair bit of calcium carbonate in the water here. But yeah, to speak to specifics of the water profile, that's kind of outside of my expertise.
There's nothing like Guelph tap water
I was going to say,
for those who have lived there.
Yeah, it's pretty. It can be a challenge.
Emily,
I was thinking more along the lines of once you get a bottle of the vermouth, like to mix it and to approximate like what you get in the cans, right? Like that was kind of my idea behind it. Like,
right,
because I think the cans are pretty close to perfect.
I appreciate that.
And like throwing whatever I can get from the grocery store, it's like, yeah, okay,
yeah,
just have a green label, like,
yeah,
whatever, right? Like,
right. So yeah, if you actually, and it's funny because a lot of these like water companies will get their water from like Aberfoyle or Guelph, which I feel like there's like some magic happening here, at least for like water companies for whatever reason. Like it's a big thing with Nestle. But beyond that, the making the vermouth soda with the sweet vermouth like out of the bottle is going to be quite different just because the vermouth has sugar.
okay,
from the start, so you're going to get some like texture and body out of that in the first place. But apart from that, like I think getting like any kind of like mineral rich or minerally like spring water would work well. Yeah, that would be kind of the best approximation, I think.
All right, cool, thanks.
No worries.
Mr. LaRock, and then Attila, we got you.
I'm sorry, I did step away for a few minutes before we open this can, so forgive me if we already talked about this, but I wonder if you could speak a bit about because I know you say you forage for a lot of botanicals and other ingredients, like what does that look like? You know, is Tariq and the Revel team getting in the family van and driving into some crown land and doing some foraging, or do you have suppliers that you work with, or a bit of both?
Yeah,
can you just talk about that a bit more?
For sure. So a couple years ago, I guess this would have been 2020, we had a forager approach us and start to bring like a bunch of weird and wild ingredients to us, and we're like all about it. He no longer forages as of like early last year. He stopped, so we Last year we were like really scrambling because we've been trying to contact him, and he kind of like fell off the face of the earth a little bit. Um, he's like totally fine. He just doesn't do it anymore and didn't feel like letting us know, I guess. Yeah, we were really scrambling and managed to get most of the ingredients ourselves. But it kind of becomes like a part of your life almost. Like you go for a walk after work and you're like, oh, elderflowers, mulberries, like dandelions, like I know where these spots are now and I'm going to go back later to get them. And you kind of like put stars on your Google Maps to go back to things, to revisit places. The one thing we've really struggled with was sassafras. Yeah, I think that's kind of why we started growing sweetgrass a little bit, because it's like it has some similar characters to sassafras, which was originally like a replacement for vanilla in our beverages. But we're also growing a bunch of botanicals ourselves just organically behind the cidery here, which helps with kind of whatever we can't forage. But it is all like plants that will do well here. We're not like putting up a greenhouse and growing oranges or anything. We're just growing stuff that can be kind of open to the air and will do well in the environment that we're in. But yeah, as far as like, what does a foraging day look like? Like we're actively thinking about dandelions as we see the first few come up. We try and stay away from the first bloom of dandelions, just because it's like food for the bees. And it's the first food for the bees. But once we start seeing blossoms happen on trees as well, then we'll start to go and pick dandelions in earnest. And so we're going and we're getting 100 pounds of dandelions every year. I think we've like got this idea for this like dandelion harvester that we can build that involves like a wheelbarrow and some metal spokes, but just gotta like figure out how to make that still. And I'm getting nervous as dandelion season approaches. But yeah, that's like what we'll do for that. Lilacs, we have like a few different spots in here in town that we'll kind of go to. Some of them on Crown land, some of them just on people's properties that maybe don't notice so much or whatever. It's a lot of Crown land though, for sure. And then we have a couple of friends, both Sun and Hill and Heartwood, that have farms that we'll go to and be like, can we pick dandelions for a day? Or Sun has a bunch of crabapple trees on their property. They use them in a beer that they make, but have offered us in the past, and so we might take them up on that this year. But yeah, it's just like a lot of like, oh, here's where spruce resin is, because we've like done these like weird walks, or I'll bike to work and walk to work pretty regularly, and so you just get to know your neighborhoods.
Wow.
Yeah.
Attila, you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you guys have like an orchard, or where do you get your fruits from? Is it local stuff, or do you just kind of find a trees? Like I used to drive around and going, oh, there's an apple tree. I can make apple pie from that. So I remember going back every year. Like, do you do that, or do you actually get like, where do you get the stuff from?
Yeah, so we do both. It's all Ontario grown, but we do a couple 100% forage ciders. We have one online right now, but there's like 9 bottles of it left. But we do have another one in the pipeline that will probably be released in a couple weeks. But excuse me, for the farms that we are using, the apples and pears are primarily coming from Twin Pines Orchard, which is an hour north of London. And then we do get a fair amount of crab apples from like Niagara area. A lot of, all of the grapes are coming from Niagara area. So like Beamsville, Lincoln, Niagara on the Lake, and most of the other fruit too. So cherries, apricots, nectarines, all of this stuff is grown like in Niagara. That's just where a lot of that fruit, soft fruit especially, is grown in Ontario. It's just the only place we have the climate for it. So yeah, that's where that's coming. Some of the foraged apples, actually, we had not far from the tree reach out to us last year, and they're an organization in Toronto that picks fruit in the city, both from like peoples that have like apples or pears or whatever in their yard, but also there's a couple heritage museums that have very, very old orchards planted on them. And so that'll be new in the newsletter, on TikTok, on Instagram. I'll be talking about that in a few weeks. But yeah, that's so it's kind of a bit of a a bit of both, to answer your question.
Oh, cool. So they pick it and bring it up to you guys, or you actually get the van and go pick it up from them and stuff like that?
Yeah, so for them, we had to pick them up from them. They primarily are donating their stuff to food banks, but they continue every year to have new people reach out to them as they as more people know about Not Far From the Tree, and just tell them, hey, I have an apple tree that I never use, come pick it. And their whole thing is like not letting any fruit go to waste. And the food banks were just like, no, we can't take any more apples, like stop. So they called us, and they're like, hey, we've got some apples. And so I think they brought us like 2,000 pounds last year, which is a heck of a lot of fruit to pick from like unpruned trees. Like that's a lot of work.
Well, that's kind of nice. It's nice that people do that. Like I said, I just see a tree. It's like, I remember that next year I have to go get some, like I have actually, I'm like, how do I pick that? So what I did is a couple of years ago, I went down to Home Depot and they have this pole they use for changing your light. It's like telescopic. So you just take that and you just pick every apple and just take it off the tree. It's kind of cool.
But yeah, it's like great to support like a project like that. I think like food security is like massively important, but also just like people trying to make less waste is great. We weren't allowed to like pay them for the fruit directly, but we just made a big donation on their website, which felt good.
100%. 100%. That is really awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Luke had a question, which I think is a bit loaded, but I'm going to read it anyway. What is the best roadside forageable botanical, and why is it staghorn sumac?
Because it grows everywhere, I guess. Yeah, we've got staghorn sumac a few years in a row. We actually didn't get it last year, mostly because we didn't have any tank space for it. We kept thinking, oh yeah, we'll empty this tank eventually, and strange. Car alarm is going, and I hope it's not my truck. Anyways,
you want to go check on it? That'd be
do you want to go check on it?
Yeah, we just had a few robberies here in the past, and I'm just gonna check on it.
Okay.
They're stealing the cider.
I mentioned it. I mentioned it earlier to Mark directly, but this has been one of the more intriguing discussions, I think. I've loved all of our presenters that we've had, but for some reason or other, I'm just I'm so focused on this whole completely wild fermentation aspect. And
so sorry, just to jump in, Abhijit, you have a great point. For those that have the Perry, go grab it now. When Tara gets back, we'll
good call.
Yeah, I feel like doing wild everything at a commercial scale, I don't know.
It just is so. It's like, I want to say devil may care, but it's also the fact that he's, you could feasibly say you're never producing the exact same thing twice.
Well, keep in mind that he can't produce the exact same thing twice. Like that's the problem that wineries run into, right? The fruit is so heavily influenced by the weather. So it doesn't matter how much effort you put into trying to produce the same thing twice, unless you're manipulating the fruit juice heavily, which is what commercial wineries do, right? They do reverse osmosis, the big ones. They're doing a lot of reverse osmosis and precipitating out tartrate crystals, and they're heavily manipulating the juice to try to get something consistent within the bounds of what they're legally allowed to do. And but if you're not a winery that's doing all of that, it's never going to be the same year after year. And it's the same problem for any fruit-based ferment. So, it's never going to be consistent. You can embrace inconsistency.
I was just gonna say the same thing. Is it maybe it's not so bad being inconsistently good? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can certainly guide it, right? It's never going to be exactly the same twice, but you can guide it. You can see the apples or grapes or whatever. So to give you an idea of how manipulated wines are, most Napa wines, if you just fermented them dry and you did not manipulate the the must at all would be around 20% alcohol. Because Napa has a really high sugar content in their grapes.
I could only imagine what
Have you ever seen a 20% alcohol wine in the LCBO?
Well, I was just going to say, like, I could only imagine what Australia would be like then, right? Because it's sort of the same situation.
It's a little different. Like, yeah, I mean, it depends on your region.
Yeah.
But yeah,
right.
They are manipulating their must heavily to get, and their final product to get down to the consistent 14.5% alcohol wine you see in the LCBO.
Yeah.
That's not what you get off the vine.
Sorry, Tariq. We had a bit of a side conversation there. So.
Great. No, that's perfect. Yeah.
Is everything okay? You're good, right?
Something's happening with the neighbor's car. I think that's someone trying to break in.
Oh boy.
I don't have the neighbor's number, so I just texted the landlord. He'll let him know.
Okay.
It's there's a real issue with this here.
There's not a question, but Abjeet had actually a comment. Let's do the Perry de Coupage.
Yeah, perfect.
Now. He can't wait anymore to taste it. So
yeah, absolutely.
So David, you have it, or you had it already, and Mark, I think you have. I don't know if you have it or not.
I'll go.
Mark's.
I put my can back in the fridge, so let me go get it.
Okay. Right.
So Perry de Coupage, it's a blend. So yeah, I mean, you guys are probably familiar with Beer de Coupage, being just a blend of a couple different vintages. Same idea with the Perry de Coupage. It's 2 vintages of Perry. So we had a 2020 version that was aged in barrel for a full year, and then blended it with a younger 2021 vintage that was just fermented in stainless. The idea being that we could kind of get the textural components from the barrel aged portion, but keep the fresher aromatics from the younger portion. And so it's something that we've been doing for a little while now. But as I mentioned, the 2021 Perry has just been wildly aromatic. So this stuff is crazy, and I love it. You can it is just Bartlett pears, but it smells like the most freshest Bartlett both flowers and pear skins. That's a lot what I get here. And texturally too, there's a pear skin character to it as well. Yeah, I've just never had a Perry that's been this fresh before. And I'm just stoked on it. They've always been a little bit strange. Yeah, either they have acidity issues, like I mentioned, has been a big one, or they can be a little bit sulfury. Yeah, it's always just been a stressful fermentation.
Is this one still available,
Yep.
Tariq? Okay, yeah.
We've got
So is Bartlett the yellow pear? The Bosch is the brown pear, right?
Yeah, Bosch is the brown one. Bartlett's the green yellow one. We've got 40 cases if I look over here.
Do you find that's a better pear to use? Because I find if you eat when you're eating it, I find that Bartlett's has more flavor, more. It's a more pear flavor compared to the Bartlett.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing when it ferments out?
Yeah, a lot of folks I love Bosch pears, but a lot of folks won't press them. Pears in general are a lot harder to press, but Bosch in particular, basically when you try to press it, you're just going to get applesauce almost, as opposed to actually getting juice out of them. And Bartlett's can be the same way. And I think that also may partially be some of our issue with Bartlett's. Farmers will want to press them. Our farmer does a lot of pressing for us. We do press some of our stuff here, but the kind of bigger volume stuff, we just don't have a press that can handle it. And also they can keep the pomace on the farm, which kind of makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, they'll want to press it a little bit more unripe because it's easier to press. And I'm like, oh, I want them ripe because I know it's going to be a little better. So there's a little bit of a push and pull there. And yeah, I actually didn't chat with my farmer to see if he had age this stuff a little bit more, the fruit itself. And I actually don't think he did. I think this is like something else. I think this is more like just like really careful, being really careful in the cidery itself.
Wouldn't would it still sort of still ripen once it's sort of chewed up? Because I know if you let it sit around, Bartletts taste a little better when they're more raw than when they are actually, you know, less applesaucey, I would find, when you're eating it. So maybe try it that way and let it sit around a bit and let it age out a bit, and then let it ferment. I don't know. I'm just sort of
the juice doesn't the juice doesn't really like continue to ripen. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're saying though. Are you suggesting?
I'm thinking it's like, you know, like put it through your, I guess what you do with apples, you put it through a grinder first, and then you press it, right? So what would happen if you take the pear and you put it through a grinder and let it sit for, let's say, you know, a little bit. That way it's still sort of a fruit, it's still, you know, doing its ripening, and then squeeze it after. Like once it's sort of getting this thing, I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So actually there are some cideries that will do that with apples. Often what is happening there is you're going to oxidize tannins. And so people that are using like really tannic fruit, often in the UK or in France, they will do that. But I think the issue you might run into if you don't have all that tannin, and Bartlett pears definitely don't have it, is you might just start to rot before you can get to it, which is a big risk. But I mean, it's an interesting thought though, and I've certainly never tried it.
Okay, cool. Well, maybe you can do a liter of it, and if it's good, say, shit, I should have more.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see there's like a couple of folks looking for grape stuff, and I think there are some places that sell grapes in Toronto. Like I think there's one right by Bellwood's Hayfest, because I know they buy some of those grapes that are like, they're imported from California, but they put those grapes in their beer. They use some local grapes too, but not exclusively. There are places in Toronto you can get them.
Oh, there's definitely. I mean, there's out here in Scarborough, you drive by a couple places in some of the industrial areas that say uvo per mosto per vino, right? Which is you know, grapes for wine, right? So like grape must, right? So there's definitely places. It's just a question of sussing them out. Luke
I know Hamilton has one. Sorry, I know Hamilton has a place. If you're on Gage going towards Queen, there's a place, Uno the Musto de Vino, right there, so you can pick some up there. And then a lot of the Portuguese and Italian places in the fall have the Musto de Vino and grapes as well too.
So Tariq, you said tossing it in a tank with a bunch of ethylene help, right?
Yeah, it might. It's kind of the same challenge of like, do you want to press it after it's all that ripe? Like we can let it ripen. It's more convincing our farmer to press it once it's gotten to that point.
So I'm curious now, because like, what's the reason why the farmer does not want to press it once it's overripe or too ripe, I guess?
Yeah, because it just turns to mush and you just don't get anything out of the pears. Okay. Yeah, and it's just like, well, what's the point? or he's there for an extra 12 hours trying to get any juice out of it.
Okay.
So that's kind of the issue.
It turns into more of a like you said, a mush, or I want to say sludge.
It's more like applesauce. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Tariq on
what do people think about Père de Coupage?
Or any comments on it? Because now I'm
really surprised. I mean, I don't know Perry, just like I didn't know vermouth, but I'm really surprised it's like, well, I don't know if it's 50-50, but part 2020 barrel-aged Perry and part stainless fermented 2021 Perry, because it's super strong pear, like aroma and flavor. Like, just almost tastes like pear juice. It's crazy how strong it is.
Totally, yeah. It's maybe like just over a quarter 2020. That's usually where we end up.
Okay, yeah, super flavorful and aromatic. I couldn't believe it when I first poured it.
Yeah. If you like pears, if you like pears, this is the drink for you.
Yeah.
It's great.
Totally. Yeah, very true to it. I feel like there's a lot of like weird perry out there because pears can just be so weird, and so it's kind of nice to have something that's really true to the fruit. Although I wish I knew more about how it happened.
I think I got a was there a bottle of perry called Para or something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would that be kind of similar or different from this, or what?
Yeah, no, that is similar, and it's the brand new vintage, and it's the first time we've kind of bottled it on its own, and it's because it is so good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Previously we've never bottled just straight Bartlett pear on its own, but we're like, holy crap, this stuff is incredible. We've got to do it. Yeah.
I am really kicking myself for not getting these ciders for this meeting because I'm hearing the comments.
You messed up.
Well, clearly, right? I mean,
I have an excuse. I was in Thunder Bay over the weekend.
Yeah.
You messed up.
Yeah, I didn't. You know what? It's
I think on the website it's
we got
free shipping over $50 to Toronto for the rest of the year, and it came like the next day. So
so I'm gonna
order some tonight.
Oh yeah,
we deliver daily in Toronto, so Matt would love the work, our driver.
So can you only get it on your website, or can you get it somewhere else as well? Your stuff.
Yeah. There are certainly a couple like bars and restaurants that carry us that will sell it to go. These days, you won't find the entire selection. People are bringing like one or two products in at a time normally, but the best bets, Paradise Grapevine, they carry us like pretty regularly. The Grape Witches shop as well. There's a couple spots called Ideal Coffee and Wine. In the East End, there's good cheese.
So probably better off online then. Okay. Do you guys deliver to Whitby as well or not?
Oh, yeah. We ship Canada wide. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Is it legal? I have no idea. Don't ask.
Just do it. Don't ask, because the LCBO is such a pain in the butt to deal with. So if you poke the hive,
I think like you'll often find Revel on tap, like various Toronto beer bars too. Like there's usually
cool.
The well-known spots will usually have Revel on tap.
For sure.
I'll have to use my technology there, David, and try to order some.
Yes. Embrace the technology.
We try to make it as easy as possible. So,
like I think for what I've heard tonight, and I like pears. Like I'm hearing these comments about the pear du coupage and that, and I keep thinking back to being a kid and having like a pear, like Unico, the Italian company, used to make these small little bottles of like pear extract, right? That you could like pop. They were like capped just like a beer bottle. You open them up, and they were so good. And I love that type of stuff. So if it exudes the pear, I'm all in. Like as far as I'm concerned, right? So.
Well, you have this year to get it. I can't guarantee it'll come back next year like this.
That's what I mean. Right? So, I'll get a couple, and then next thing you know, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna buy the rest.
I think this year on the fall grain buy, you should put in pear juice and some apple cider juice, so David can ferment all this stuff. He seems to be blown away with this right now.
So we've had apple cider from that guy in the Eastern Townships for I don't know, at least we've offered it at least once, sometimes twice a year for the past 3 years. I've bought it every time, and it's made pretty good cider. Like I think I pitched some champagne yeast, but otherwise I didn't pasteurize it. I just let it ride, and it made like a pretty legit cider. Like I thought it was pretty good.
Do you think you could convince him to not freeze it?
So he only does that sometimes. I think
for him, like that first batch, like that was amazing.
Yeah.
And I haven't bought it since because it's been frozen every single time. I want to spontaneously ferment it, and some stuff will survive the freezing, but not everything.
We can certainly get you guys juice if you want it like that. The issue is like it's like a 24-hour window.
Yeah.
Before it starts fermenting. So like, yeah, we get this juice, and it's like, okay, guys, like I maybe have like a week's notice when it's gonna come in. And yeah, like I mean, we could also deliver it because we're delivering in Toronto pretty regularly. And if you guys are all based in Toronto, that wouldn't be an issue. But yeah, it's a logistical effort to do it for sure.
So we should definitely talk about this later in the fall, Tara, because that'd be pretty awesome.
It would be pretty cool.
And Luke, to your point, I think for our main supplier, like that logistical, like that timing, because he's driving, he's just like a guy. Like he's just a guy who lives in East
I
End.
remember. What was it? It wasn't your house. It was somebody's house in the East End, right? That we just like rolled up to on the first.
That was him. That was him, Chris.
Yeah, no. Oh yeah, and it was just like
he's just like doling out jugs of cider to like 20 people.
Funny, I guess.
Well, when I did mine 2 years ago, I went actually to Algoma Orchards out in Bowmanville. But if you go to Costco, they actually have Algoma cider there. You can actually pick it up. I think it's a 3-liter jug, and it's fairly reasonable price. Like, I don't think there's anything in there. You just use that for fermenting it. Is that right? Can you do that?
Well, the problem is the spontaneous ferment of it, right? Like if they weren't pasteurizing it or freezing it, then those bottles would be exploding in very, very short order.
They're in a cooler, so
like at refrigerator temperatures are not cold enough. Like it will still ferment. It'll be slow, but it'll still eventually explode.
For sale to the public, they're going to pasteurize. That's what I would think. Because if the intent is for consumption, which it probably is in the case of Costco, is
right.
They're going to pasteurize it, right? So, or do something to it so that fermentation doesn't happen. I'm intrigued again by the spontaneous fermentation. So I would, I hate to say this, I'm going to agree with Luke, right? I'm going to say that, yeah, I'd want something that I could just like let it sit and let's see what happens. I've got neighbors who've got 2 fruit trees in their backyards on each side, and it's like, why not? Let's see what happens.
Go steal it out
there. Well, he doesn't. There's plums and there's I think there's pears on one side and plums on the other side. So just
perfect. You can do both. You can do perry and you can do cider. There you go.
I would say if you want to get into wild fermentation, start with sauerkraut. It's almost impossible to go wrong with sauerkraut.
That's what I started with. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Totally. On the farm. Yeah. When I was doing vegetable ferments, like salt, just like doing a salt sauerkraut ferment. You might need some tannin. I don't know if you've had this happen, Luke, but sometimes it can go like real squishy on you if you don't have any tannin source.
I use calcium chloride for that.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So I've used like horseradish leaves and just whatever grape leaves you can use, stuff that was growing on the farm at the time. But yeah, just to keep it crispy. But yeah, those are super fun to do.
I was actually thinking of doing that because I have a cabbage downstairs. I'm going, I got a cabbage. Why not just throw some salt on it and see what happens with it? Mm-hmm. I used to do it before, but I always find, like, you read a recipe, it says, for this much, use a tablespoon of salt. I'm going, you got to put more than that in there. So I put it in there. It's like, whoa, it's really salty. It's really, it just blows your head apart.
So do it by mass. You should always do it by mass.
Yeah, I know. Things. I know. Yeah. But it's like, it seems like 50 pounds, you use, 10 grams. Like, that's only 4 teaspoons.
Well, no, that would be dangerous to eat. Don't use 2 grams of 50 pounds.
But,
I'm going to stop the recording. It's still going, but I'll cut it short before I post the recording. I will say before I stop the recording, Tariq, thank you very much. I still have a question though, but I'll ask it after the recording stopped. Not because it's
Oh yeah, there's 2 more questions here too.
Are there? Okay. Oh, sorry. Let's find out what what are the most asked for repeat batches? That you received.
Oh man. So this is an interesting question to answer now because we now have this ability for people to go onto like a past ciders page, which is just in the footer of our website, and you can click like notify me when available, where the add to cart button normally is, and I get a report emailed me automated that shows me like what people are asking for the most, and it's like Swaff is always our most popular bottle, so it's a cider with strawberries and cherries and red grape skins. And then once that was back, Bittersweet Freedom, which is my personal favorite cider, is quite up there. It is a cider just made with hislop crab apples, which are a super rare variety, originated around Boston in the 1850s. And they're just like super tannic, like chalky tannin, but also like citrusy, also quite funky consistently every year when you ferment them. So that one, and then actually the vermouth that became this vermouth soda, which actually has the same name, the spot you told me about. That one is also quite often up there and like most requested.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Michael had a question. Has there ever been batches that failed to ferment?
Yeah, absolutely. If you sulfite your juice, that will happen basically, and we learned that the hard way. Basically, when we were working out of the first 2 years of Revel, I was working out of West Avenue's facility, making my own product. I was just like in his space, and he is doing things conventionally and kind of taught me a little bit, because yeah, at that point I had everything I had done was at the home scale. And so I was like just learning how to commercially do these things for the first time. And so, yeah, he would sulfite his juice before adding yeast to it. And if you sulfite your juice and you don't add yeast to it, then it'll just go moldy because you've killed off the yeast that would outcompete those organisms. So that has happened to me in the past. And yeah, hard lesson to learn, but you learn it once.
Cliff, you had a question as well? You're on mute.
I do, yes. Along the same vein, as far as like favorite batch, what would be your favorite thing that you've got in the store other than the vermouth?
Oh yeah, okay. I'm just gonna walk and look at the store at the moment. Where are you guys? I lost you guys. There we are. Let's see here. Oh man, it's my motion sensor going off. In the store right now, what I am probably reaching for the most, or what I'd be the most excited about, I think would be Solera. So Solera is a blend of 2 years of foraged fruit. So it's both foraged fruit from 2020 that our forager got for us. We liked that batch so much that we set a single barrel of it aside. And then the other portion of this is the foraged fruit from Toronto, from those like heritage museums that I mentioned. It's just a really cool beverage. I can show you guys what it looks like. But it also just like continues to change. It's just like a super nerdy one, in that, yeah, it kind of tasted like rum and orange juice when we ordered the labels, and I think that's what it says on the label. But I think I clarified that on the product page a little bit. It's like not really like that anymore. It certainly has like some citrus character to it, and like a little bit of like the depth that we were like, oh yeah, rum almost. But it was just like, it's just like tannin. Yeah, we bottled it as a pet nat, and so it was like quite young and is like continuing to develop, I think, in better ways even than it was originally. But yeah, just like super cool to see what wild apples can give you. And now that our friend doesn't forage anymore, this is like impossible to make this product again in this way. And so it's just like, yeah, it's a super cool one.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
That is really neat. There's Mark had one more question. There is not currently a tasting room at Revel, is there?
No, there's not. 3 months. We just took the unit up front over. So we're kind of in this weird space. We're behind Mike the Mover, which is a moving company, and the building is like 20,000 square feet, but they have the majority of it. And we did just take on the front unit that actually is street facing, because right now you have to like drive past a no trespassing sign to like get to our little bottle shop, which is, yeah, it's an interesting experience. And yeah, people continue to discover us for the first time, even locals, because we're so, yeah, like just back here. But yeah, so that's under construction currently. We've like put a lot of the plumbing in now, but our contractor figures like another couple months, and then I'm gonna say like at least another month for licensing after that, after it's built. And so hopefully 3 months. But yeah, it's hard to say. I've never done a project like this before.
Actually,
So,
where are you guys located? I'm sorry, I don't know.
So we're 62 Dawson Road here in Guelph.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll
Sorry
have to do a fall field trip. We can all pick up the
Yeah.
juice.
Yeah,
We'll, have to
perfect.
do,
Yeah.
we'll pick up the juice from the facility and do a site visit.
There you go.
That'd be
Very
sweet.
cool.
Um,
Just
That's
watch
roughly
out for
what,
the
about
potholes in the
That's
driveway.
about September time. Is that when roughly the output?
yeah, we'll start to get well, some crab apples will come in. We probably won't start pressing the majority of our stuff, or at least the stuff that you'd be able to pick up till like maybe October, November. Just a lot of that fruit tends to just get better with age, either that or gets picked later. Yeah, just the better fruit is often picked later as a general rule.
Okay, so by October then. October for
Yeah.
the cider then. Okay, we'll do a road trip. Let's do it.
Yeah, no duct tape return for the Picats. I used to do that. I hand wrote every one of those duct tape labels. That was such a nightmare. I was like, definitely getting early onset arthritis from this. But we had this, like, the last time we did it, it was when they like first called lockdown ever, and we were like, oh well, I guess we are shutting down. Like, this is our last hurrah. Like, let's get this product out, and like got some rolls of duct tape and made these labels. And it turns out we didn't have to shut down anyways, but I did that anyway. So yeah, that was hopefully the last of it. Yeah, I love them, but it's just such a headache to write up.
Wow. This is there any other questions? Because my question got asked already, so I don't have to go back to it. But if there's no other questions, I'm going to stop the recording. And I want to say thank you very, very much, Tariq, for spending the time talking to us about Revel Cidery and explaining process, vision, what the ciders are like. I mean, like, I haven't even had one yet, and I'm a fan. So, like, I mean, this is I think that does speak to what you said. At least what you said speaks to me, right? So I think that's really kind of cool. I'm looking forward to it. So
yeah, I appreciate you guys inviting me out. This is super sweet. I feel like, yeah, I mean, we've all done like probably more Zooms than we ever want to, but I like love it for the opportunity to be able to speak to people kind of anywhere. Yeah, we were like constantly meeting with our importers, and I just spoke to a wine club in like Washington DC, and I'd never be able to do that if this kind of format didn't exist. So it's a lot of fun for me. Appreciate it.
So true. Thanks a lot, Tariq.
Yeah, thanks guys. Cheers.
Well, thanks, Tariq.